Let's bring in Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of RinkWide Vancouver. He is down at Rogers Arena following the proceedings. Jeff, thanks for joining. Just first and foremost, what has struck you here as we near the Canucks pick at number 15?
The fact that we're still waiting for the Vancouver Canucks to make a pick. This thing has dragged along. And I think in years gone by, we forget the first round generally takes about 3 hours. This one is on pace to be longer than that. And you know what? I said on X, like visually, I think there's a lot to like in the presentation of this draft. The Zoom room thing has to go. And then the secondary interview right after the Zoom room. So there's some clunkiness to it. I'm not huge on the celebrities, but I get it. Showbiz, and they're trying to spruce it up a little bit. But through all of that, the fact that there have been very few surprises and very few trades, I guess, to this stage of the proceedings is sort of the overwhelming sentiment that for the most part, it has gone according to a lot of people's forms. After about the fifth pick, you can start to quibble with some of the projections that are out there. But Ben Kindle going where he went is a cool local story, obviously, having all of us covered his parents. But that one maybe is a surprise so far through the first 14 picks of this draft. So, yeah, I mean, we were expecting some fireworks, a lot of talk about teams looking to trade and trade down in the draft, whatever the case. I haven't seen a lot of that. And now we shall see. After months and months of, and look, I was firmly in the camp that thought there was no chance the Canucks would use 15 on this night. It looks and feels like they're going to step to their virtual podium at the very least and make the pick.
Do you think they will have cover in terms of explaining using this pick, Jeff, because of the fact that so few picks have been moved and particularly moved for roster players?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it sounds like they have been in and active on a lot of phone calls, but haven't been able to consummate any deals yet. And just because it doesn't happen, look, JT Miller was traded before things got underway on the second day of the draft in 2019 here in Vancouver. So, if the Canucks use their pick tonight, it doesn't mean that they can't still be active on the trade front tomorrow or the day after that. We see lots of times as well that in previous years with previous draft configurations where a lot of the groundwork was laid on the draft floor, teams would head back to their war rooms and, a couple days after the draft, maybe you would see a trade come down the pipe that way. So if you're one that's waiting for the Canucks to make a trade, don't lose all hope if it doesn't happen this evening. But I think I will be surprised. I'm not going to be surprised now, but I think I am surprised that it's come to this, that they will use this 15th overall selection.
And everybody in the NHL, Jeff, seems to think that they are close to winning. With the boost in the salary cap, it just feels like everybody's got this misunderstood value of their own roster. I wonder if further along prospects are worth more to teams, like Ramakis and Wielanders. If we're going to look at what assets they could use to find a center, maybe those are worth more than the pick right now.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that we really haven't seen or heard the fallout from the Minnesota deal, where it sounded like the Canucks offered 15 plus, and nobody seems to know what the plus was, but it wasn't enough, obviously, to get the interest of the Minnesota Wild to sign off on that deal. And again, and I said to you guys when I was on last week, I think that doesn't mean that trade is necessarily dead and buried. It's just that the first foray for the Canucks wasn't to Minnesota's liking. So you're right, and maybe Minnesota wanted to get through the draft weekend here and sort of see how the chips fall and take stock of where they are and where some of the other teams that they're battling with, and then maybe they circle back with the Vancouver Canucks. So, I mean, there's been so much talk, and the Canucks have been linked to Marco Rossi for so long. Again, I'm not prepared to throw that out of the window entirely at this juncture, but we shall see. And look, maybe the Canucks make a pick here with a player that turns out to be, maybe they don't trade the pick itself, but maybe the player that they get could be peddled. We certainly have seen that in all sports. After the fact, you include that player in a package of some sort. So, again, lots of moving parts here, but the end result, and I know we're doing this in real time, I'm sort of looking off to the side to keep an eye on the TV screen here at Rogers Arena. Canucks are next up. They're on the clock here. So.
The Canucks are on the clock. It's Jackson Smith, the big left shot defenseman from Tri-City in the Western Hockey League, who goes 14th overall to Columbus. So, Blake, they do go defenseman. They just don't go Aitchison.
Not Aitchison, yeah.
Smith. So, Aitchison's available here for the Canucks. Let's run down the rest of the list. I think there will be many who are stunned that Victor Eklund is still on this board. The smaller, pugnacious Swedish winger from Djurgårdens. Braden Coots, probably the best centerman available right now with the Seattle Thunderbirds. Does he have enough offensive upside to be a second-line center in the NHL, or are you just going to get a very good third-line center? Didn't play with great talent this year. Those who like him love him, think he's a highly intelligent player with a two-way game who's got enough skill to hang in an NHL top six. Justin Carbonneau, the nearly 6'2", 200-plus pound winger from the Quebec League, who's got one of the better shots, some of the best skill in this draft. There's some skating concerns there. And then there's Cole Reshny, who everybody likes as a smart forward. There is some talk about whether the former Victoria Royal is going to be able to hang at center ice in the National Hockey League. He's a smaller or lighter guy, but everybody suspects you're getting a pretty useful middle six forward there. Pride of Kelowna, Lyndon Lakovic, who's a 6'4" would-be power forward from Moose Jaw. I say that because every write-up I read about him is that the kid needs to use his size and be more physical, that he's got the makings of a power forward game. He just thus far hasn't played physically enough to profile as that in the National Hockey League. So those are the players available to you. Of course, they could go with somebody else. We've already seen a couple of big surprises here. Guys, I'd be really interested to know, is the phone lighting up in Bill Guerin's office right now going, okay, Bill, here you go, last and best, 15th overall plus whomever for Marco Rossi.
Well, especially because you have some names that have slid here a little bit, right? Just in case. Now, what are the chances the guy who's trying to unload the small center is interested in a slightly undersized winger? But I mean, a guy like Aitchison is, we'll see. I don't know that at this late stage it's likely. But
it is former Canuck Director of Amateur Scouting Judd Brackett making the calls there, right, for who they select. And we know Judd has had great success there. Sorry, Jeff.
Well, I was just saying, in any other year, if I'm the Vancouver Canucks and you get to this stage, I am bolting to my Zoom screen or however they're doing the selections and taking Keishon Aitchison. Like, I love the idea of that player, and I think Canuck fans would love that player, but this is a team that is in such dear need for offensive upside now and to stock the cupboards as well. So I don't think that this is the year to be going defenseman, but I just like so much about that player. And Blake, we had a good chat with Cam Robinson the other day when Matt was off, talking again about the attributes of Aitchison, who can beat you in a bunch of different ways. I think I'm fascinated to see here. We won't have to wait long. If the Canucks do use the pick, in some ways, guys, I think this is going to be really telling. Because Eklund is still on the board, there is a strong possibility that for a fourth straight year under Patrick Allvin, the Canucks will use their first pick in the draft on a Swede.
Yep.
That can't be a coincidence.
Nope.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but there are some in our listening audience that constantly point to the fact that the Canucks seem to look past their own backyard, look past the Western Hockey League, and it's not that they don't select out of the Western Hockey League, Sawyer Minio, Parker Alkos, in recent years, but in using their first pick. Now, Lekermacki, Wielander, first rounders. Last year was Melvin Fernstrom, who was a third rounder, but still, when they finally had a chance to pick, they used it on a Swede. So, is that a pattern? Is it a trend? Is it a coincidence? Is it when the best player available, the tipping point default goes to the Swedish player from the Swedish general manager? It's certainly worth noting at the very least. And of course, the Canucks have had a long history of success with Swedes. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong, but I just think that it can't be a coincidence, that there has to be more to a pattern there.
They probably trust their European and Swedish scouts a little more. They have the camera set up in the Canucks draft war room. There is not a lot of activity there as we're now inside of 1 minute before the Vancouver selection.
We should point out, Matt, that just for those wondering, the War Room, and some of these teams have been set up in their own National Hockey League team dressing rooms. The Canucks are in the 8th floor boardroom of the tower here that is attached to Rogers Arena. So that's where they're doing their heavy lifting here this afternoon.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Blake brought it up, but insurance for Quinn Hughes, Jeff, do you have to start thinking about that? Does that make a defenseman a little more possible here?
I suppose so. I mean, I think that's part of the reason that they again have been linked to Bowen Byram this week too. I mean, I think everything's in play, but there's absolutely Jim Rutherford's on a record essentially acknowledging the possibility that they may need a replacement, or at least something, a reasonable facsimile. You're not going to replace Quinn Hughes. So, yeah, I mean, look, they would have better intel than we do if they've had any indication from Quinn, or if they're hedging their bet in that way, that maybe that is something that they have to consider at the very least. I still expect them, if they're using the pick, to take a forward. It's just a question of which one.
Cam Robinson is saying that either Eklund or Aitchison would be considered a home run given their draft slot. So
Michael Samuelsson will be making the pick for the Vancouver Canucks. So is that a bit of a tell?
Yeah.
Of course, Michael working over in Europe, in Sweden, working with Canucks prospects. I'll say this: Michael looks fantastic. He looks in even better shape now than when he was as a Blue. Looks a little thinner. Wow, how about that? Retired with all those millions of dollars and he got thinner. Well done, Michael.
Going to have to hustle home from Los Angeles development camp starting this weekend for the Vancouver Canucks.
Right.
And of course, he's a big part of the development department now for this hockey club.
Mm-hmm. And the pick is in. And the Vancouver Canucks have selected Braden Coots, the centerman from the Seattle Thunderbirds. We talked about Coots as being the best center iceman available here. We talked about Coots in terms of, and Mertka, this would go for Mertka as well, the big right shot defenseman who went to Buffalo in the top 10. The Seattle Thunderbirds had been such a good program for a number of years. As we know, junior hockey tends to be cyclical, that they were left there as a couple of 18-year-olds, not necessarily with the deepest or most talented group of teammates in Seattle this year. So everything, I think, a little bit with a grain of salt when we talk about the statistics of Braden Coots this season, playing on a team that just didn't necessarily have the firepower of a lot of other clubs in the Western Hockey League. But this is a pure center, and there's a lot of sort of hybrid, can he play center guys in this draft. He measured 5'11 and a half, weighed in at 186 pounds at the NHL Draft Combine a couple of weeks ago. We mentioned the points, 26 goals, 63 assists, so he was better than a point-per-game player for Seattle. He also got a chance to play for Canada at the World Under-18s, of course, with Seattle not being a postseason factor. Take these stats as well with a grain of salt because you're playing some teams that just really can't hang with Canada. So it was 12 points in 7 games at the World Under-18s. The Hockey News ranked him as 13th overall, Blake. I know you got the elite prospect list there.
They had him ranked 16th in the range of 12 to 19. The one thing I'll say that differentiates his profile versus a guy like an Eklund is top 6 potential. They carve out the spot, the possibility that he could be, but this is a worker. This is a worker, be a forechecking machine. The skill is not the biggest attribute, and we talked about there were skill guys there. Eklund and Carbonell are skill guys. Yep. And for a team that
they're wingers, Blake. They're wingers. Yeah. And this is a right shot centerman. Mm-hmm. Sherwood Park, Alberta kid, so one province over. Look, I mentioned I played golf with a couple of WHL players this week. They raved about this young man. I was throwing names at them, giving them comparisons. Who would you take, Coots or this guy, Coots or Reshny, Coots or some of the other Western League forwards? And time after time, they would say Coots. He plays in all situations, power play, penalty kill. He'll be out there protecting a lead late at the junior level. We'll see about that in the National Hockey League. He's got pretty good hands. He's one of these kids, Blake, that if he was an inch or two bigger and 15 pounds heavier, I think there's no way he would be available to the Canucks at 15th overall. The IQ is very, very high here. Everybody seems to like the intelligence that he plays with on the ice. He just may fall a little bit short on a skill and scoring level to be a prototypical NHL
How's
top
the strike,
six.
Jeff?
Well, and I know you guys got Cam Robinson coming up, and certainly Cam follows this as closely as anybody. I will admit I'm at an arm's length at that, when it comes to the ins and outs of prospects. But when we had Cam on the other day, and I asked him if they get Coots, will they be happy? Should Canuck fans be happy? And there was sort of a muted response from Cam, in as much as everybody loves the person, the high quality and character that you talked about there, but it is a question of what's the top end here for a team that needs centermen, certainly, but just elite skill. This is a guy that, I think the fact he's a right shot center, like, don't sleep on that. This is absolutely an organizational need. So I like that. But if I'm a Canuck fan here, I need to like more than the way he holds his stick. And so,
yeah.
It does check a box. Without a doubt, it checks a box. And it's crazy that we sit here still, and it's been a bunch of years, and we talk about the fact that they have done their bidding without right shot centers at the National Hockey League level for basically too long now. I guess Lindholm was in here briefly, but I think it's a safe pick. And when I say that, I just mean that there's a sure floor here for this guy. It's just the question of ultimately, what is the ceiling? But that's what you deal with when you're picking 15th overall.
Yeah.
So let's reset here. Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. The Vancouver Canucks keep their first round selection 15th overall and select Seattle Thunderbird centerman Braden Coots with that pick. The other thing I'll say, guys, for eager beager Canucks fans, this is a kid you can drive down and watch play next season.
True.
Right? If
he comes through Vancouver, plays against the Giants, right?
He's going to play the Giant, absolutely. Yeah. So this is a kid we're going to, because the Western Hockey League, or because he's from our part of the world, we're going to be able to keep a little closer tabs on him because he is going to be a major junior player next year. And look, I don't suspect we're looking at an NHL Player of the Year after that either. No. I think this is probably on the 3-year program. I know now we're seeing a little bit more of draft plus 2 years guys getting opportunity, and that's fair. I don't want to limit them. Perhaps that's available to them, but I think you're counting on this player on your NHL roster. I think you're talking 3 years away before you can realistically expect anything from him. Let's get to the Whistler Golf Club poll question, asking you, how do you feel about the Canucks keeping their first round pick and selecting a player? Like it, dislike it? Blake?
I think it is disappointing in the end. I'll give them the off-ramp of, based on what we saw around the league, I get why it happened, but I think it's still possible that you can still say you don't like it. I know nobody was able to pull off a draft floor, asterisk draft floor trade here, but maybe you could have been the one. I just wonder what the circumstances were that led to this. And I don't know if we're going to get an honest response from Patrick Allvin as to why it ended up being kept, and if they fought tooth and nail because they don't want to take away from Braden Coots' moment, I don't think, and say, yeah, we tried to trade it. We settled on the kid. So I don't know that we'll ever get the honest answer there, but I'll say I don't like it because there was always the potential this was used to help get them an NHL center.
Jeff?
I'll lean towards I like it. I guess for the last 48 hours, I sort of had come to the realization that it just felt like they were going to use the pick. And so organizationally, they need right shot centers. I like the fact, as you said, and this is just value added, that he is playing down the highway and will be through Langley, and you can watch him and follow his progression. And, it's not a guy that's grown up on the other side of the world, and you're going to have to watch grainy film of him. You can get your eyeballs on him. And, as we said, Seattle's been a model program in the Western Hockey League here for the last couple of years, and got to the Memorial Cup when it was held up in Kamloops a couple of seasons ago, produced a bunch of really good players over the last years. And so I like that fact that he's coming from a program that had a track record of success here in the last little while. So all things considered, it doesn't blow me out of the water, but again, this wasn't a top 5 pick. This was sort of the kind of player that I expected that they would get, and he had been linked to the Canucks for so long that I am not surprised that Braden Coots ends up being the selection of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jeff. We were talking about this young man March, April in terms of, it looks like he'll probably be there for the Canucks around where they picked. Right shot center from this neck of the woods. Good two-way guy. I'm going to vote like it. Look, if you could have swung one of these deals like Montreal got for Noah Dobson, like Utah got for J.J. Peterka, where the cost of acquisition wasn't as steep as we thought it might be, then I would have been all for trading the 15th overall selection, given the way the Canucks are managed and what their priorities are in terms of the playoffs next year and Quinn Hughes. But I've been one of the many people who have said, look, you're just kicking the can down the road and eventually delaying the rebuild that's going to come, or you're going to fall short of building a championship team because you trade out so many prospects and picks. So from that standpoint, I quite like it. And, as I mentioned, I played golf with a couple of WHL players this week who just raved about the young man. So I've got to admit that is influencing my decision as well. I'm going to vote like it on the Whistler Golf Club poll question. The Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club now taking bookings for any time during the 2025 season. Primetime's filling up fast. Whether you're golfing or just visiting Whistler, check out Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill. That overlooks the 18th green. It's home of Whistler's Best Burger. Fantastic selection of local beers there as well. And if you do have a group of 12 or more, tell them about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups. Other thing I'd like to say now is Blake tracks our YouTube subscriptions, and we're getting close to a big round number there. So if you are watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Blake is going to be such a happy guy if we get to that big round number by the end of the weekend. He'll be beaming on Monday, and really, Mike and I need him beaming on Monday after a very early flight back from Toronto. Ain't that the case, Mike?
I will shout out whoever becomes that 10,000th subscriber. And I will also shout out Eagle Bay, who has been donating super chats with no comments, just wants to get those proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation.
Very nice.
A big thank you to Eagle Bay for contributing in that regard.
We do have Cam Robinson coming up here from the draft in Los Angeles when he gets a minute to sneak away. And we now do have Victor Eklund selected in this first round. The New York Islanders must be absolutely giddy. Now, he's not James Higgins, the Long Island guy that they were hoping to get when they made this trade with Montreal for the 2 first-round picks, 16 and 17. But I'm going to guess they didn't expect that Eklund would be available to them at 16th overall. So the New York Islanders are going to walk away from this draft from Matthew Schaefer, the first overall, maybe the biggest faller in Eklund at 16, and they've got the next selection here as well, so we'll see what they do. Jeff, our first opportunity to talk to you about this matter with the Vancouver Canucks, so let's get off the draft for a moment and talk about Connor Garland and this rumored 6-year, $6 million per year extension. What are our thoughts there?
I'm all right with it. I think that's the price of doing business in the new economy of the rising salary cap world in the National Hockey League. It's a slight raise for a guy who has battled hard for a bunch of years for the Vancouver Canucks. My issue isn't with the contract or with the player. It's on a really good team, on a Stanley Cup contender. Connor Garland is a third-line guy, a guy that drives a third line and gives your third line an edge over most of your opponents. But you tell me, how long are we going to have to wait for the Vancouver Canucks to have 6 forwards better than Connor Garland? And that's my issue, that Connor Garland's already here. He's been part of this team that has spun its wheels for far too long, aside from the outlier season that was last year. And you know exactly what you're getting in Connor Garland. He's a 50-point guy, no more, no less. The engine's going. He wins puck battles. He's fun to watch. He's hard to play against, all those types of things. But he's a 50-point guy at the end of the day. He's consistently a 50-point guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the going right now for 50-point guys is going to be in that neighborhood of $6 million. So, I think it's in line with the kind of contract that he deserves. 6 years, maybe a little surprised when they have made it so abundantly clear that they didn't want to go long-term with Brock Besser, but they're willing to go long-term with just about anybody that's not named Brock Besser, it feels like. And, they were quick to give extensions to Marcus Paterson and Drew O'Connor. And here, before he's even eligible to sign an extension, I don't know what the hurry was necessarily, but they're getting a deal done with Connor Garland. So, again, that just lends me more ammunition, I guess, to think that Brock Besser has turned the page, and certainly the reports out there today that he's going to market, and that's not a surprise. I am going to be really interested to see, what's at the top of Brock's priority list after years of spinning his wheels here with an underachieving Vancouver Canucks team. I hope he puts himself in a position to win. He's going to get paid wherever he goes.
Sorry, Jeff, let me just jump in because I saw it on Twitter, and I don't know if it's pure rumor, fantasy, what have you, or if there's actually some real to this, but I saw that the Winnipeg Jets were tied to Brock Besser. And when are the Winnipeg Jets ever tied to a free agent, let alone an American free agent who's a scoring winger? But what do we know about Winnipeg? Really good team. And a few hours north of Minnesota and all the family there, right?
It's borderline Minnesota.
If Minnesota doesn't want to pay you because they have other priorities, and you're looking to go closer to home, the way a Canadian community has embraced Brock Besser and the Besser family, that could easily continue in Winnipeg. I'd love it from a Winnipeg lands a big free agent storyline angle. I'd love it from a Brock gets as close to home as he possibly can storyline angle. And quite frankly, if they're losing Nikolai Ehlers, they're going to need some goals, and he's going to get a chance to play some good offensive players.
Yeah, he's sort of the anti-Nikolai Ehlers. Ehlers does it with speed, where that's not Brock's calling card, obviously. But look, I hope that there's a long line of teams that want to get their hands on Brock Besser. I hope he has options. But after years of really not getting much of a sniff in terms of team success, I hope that he uses this opportunity to position himself to play for a team that's going to be a perennial playoff team. That's my wish for him, but ultimately there'll be a ton of factors, I'm sure, that go into all of that. On the Connor Garland front, I will say this, that, he's a proud Bostonian, has represented Team USA again at the World Championships. He's proudly American. I wondered if he would have looked as a guy, and, he said all the right things. I think he's enjoyed his time in Vancouver. I just thought he might be a guy that tried to orchestrate a move closer to home, or at least back across the border. But if he's signing a 6x6 extension here, that would suggest that he wants to be here. We know how much he enjoyed playing for Rick Tocchet in two different spots. I always kind of thought maybe there was a way that they would be reunited for a third time, and somewhere down the line it may happen. But in the short term, for Connor Garland, good on him. He's fun to watch, as I said, and that he's just going to show up and compete and play hard. It's just they need more. They just need a lot more than, and that's why, even if they decide to bite the bullet and go with P.S. Suter and find a way to get, that's fine. But he was here too.
Yes,
they got to get better. And
the same crew with Evander Kane is not actually getting you that much further ahead here. And Evander Kane instead of Besser, ultimately. With the 7 more years of Garland, if you can get 5 good ones out of the 7, I think the contract is a win. Do you think you can do that? Do you think he's got 5 good years left in him?
I see no reason why not. He's been really durable in his time as a Canuck. And even though he's undersized, we know how tenacious he is. I think, he seems to take good care of himself and reports in peak shape and all those types of things. I see no reason. I don't see any of his sort of identifiable skills falling off the cliff. Skating's not an issue for him, and I don't think it will be as time marches on. And again, he's going to be 30 here. It's not like they're signing this when he's 33. He's not John Tavares at that stage of his career. So, no, look, lots of guys can perform well into their mid-30s. The aging curve doesn't seem to matter to the Dallas Stars. When you look at Joe Pavelski and Jamie Benn and re-upping with Matt Duchene, I think Connor Garland strikes me as a guy that absolutely can continue to give you what he's given you, again, though, you also know with Connor Garland that, like, I don't see him having a breakout season at this stage of his career. I see him as a guy that's going to push 20 goals and 50 points. You can use him in all situations. He took on penalty killing last year, so we sort of added that. But again, it wouldn't be my choice to have him on your top unit power play, and yet he was consistently out there as that sort of fake slap shot over on the sideboards. He really isn't a shooting threat. He was used as a guy that transported the puck, some entries, puck battles and retrievals, those types of things. But again, if the plan here is for this team to get competitive and be a force in the division and then ultimately get out of the division, they need a whole lot more above Connor Garland. So Connor Garland in the third line position, if you could lock him in there and tell me that they were going to bring in a boatload of guys that could play ahead of him on the depth chart, then fine. But if he is forced to play higher just because they don't have adequate replacements for him yet, that's not ideal. I don't think that's in the best interest of the hockey club.
All right, an update from the draft where you'll be pleased to know that E from Entourage is still a New York Islanders fan and still willing to do NHL events at their beck and call. He announces the third Islanders pick of the day, 17th overall, and the Islanders get the number one overall pick and the two biggest fallers in this draft in both Victor Eklund and Kashawn Aitchison, the big defenseman from the Barrie Colts that we've been talking about for a number of picks.
That's a draft class. That is a good draft class.
Well, I mean, it cost them Noah Dobson, though, Blake. Let's not remember the cost here.
You're right.
Very, very extreme. A first pair right shot offensive defenseman. They may go many, many years before finding a player like Noah Dobson again, but they got a couple of good young players and they got great value taking them at 16 and 17. The other story that we've got going on here from this draft, and of course a new setup in LA before a live audience with no teams on the floor. So the stage, Gary is more proximal to his people, Blake. And as you know, this is where Gary lets his hair down and has some fun with the crowd.
Has he danced?
At the draft. He has not yet danced. I have not yet seen him conduct the orchestra in Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline, as he tends to do from the draft. But I'm seeing some loosey-goosey one-handed handshake / hugs from the commissioner, not the stiff, NHL code handshake. I do wonder whether that's because of the presence of all the celebrities who are pretty quick to greet these prospects.
He might just be going loopy.
Hugs.
He might be going loopy because they're 2.5 hours in. We're just past the halfway mark of the opening round here. The NBA first round took 2 hours totality.
It was very quick, the NBA first round this year. Quickest in many, many years.
That's what it should be. 2 hours is a good draft night. That's a good TV show.
Guys, and
you got to give them some time on the clock because that facilitates trades. I just wonder if Gary's regretting 32 teams now with how long this thing is.
But I think, guys, and we've all covered enough of these things, that once you get past really the top 3 drafts, to me it's far less a national event and more of a regional. Like, when the Boston Bruins picked 7th overall, Bruins fans care. The greater audience doesn't need the whole dog and pony show with the Bruins front office, and I don't even care really to hear that much about from the player himself. That Bruins media is going to get a chance and talk to him, and so there are so many ways to tighten it up. They don't consult me in these matters, but this idea that the player does the whole Zoom room thing and then turns around and does a secondary interview right after that with the broadcast host, the clock should start the minute the one pick is in, then the clock should start again. They seem to be delaying that. Need to go back to the panel for all sorts of discussion. So again, I think visually it looks great. Like, I think the set and some of the things that they've done there look really good, but also a few elements that they probably could use a do-over on.
Yeah, and we'll be back to a draft floor with teams next year, and of course we'll be back to draft shout-outs to the watch party happening at the Applebee's in the strip mall off the expressway.
Well, we still got that from Jeremy Roenick.
Did we?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
I'll give a shout out to Yellow Dog.
Wait a second. That's Chicago?
Which hopefully is poured in some of those establishments. Let me shout out the Be Cool Pineapple Tapache from Neighborhood Brewing right now. That's available, a funky little number. inspired by the traditional Mexican tepache. It's bursting with pineapple flavor, hint of cinnamon for some warmth as well. It's a laid-back brew, crispy, tangy. Go find it at your nearest private or government liquor store.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. We appreciate you hanging in with us here today. And I anticipate that the Vancouver Canucks will make at least Todd Harvey available here, their director of amateur scouting, to discuss this pick. Thanks, Jeff. Talk to you Monday.
I think the plan is Patrick Elvine this evening and then Todd Harvey to wrap the draft on Saturday afternoon.
Okay, good.
Thank you, sir.
It would be interesting to hear what Alvin says with regards to how much trade discussion was around this pick, because as we long suspected, I think the Vancouver Canucks' preference was to make this deal, to use it as part of a package to lure that top two center. And guys, maybe one more, Jeff, like now we're almost at situation critical, right? In terms of this hunt for a top two center. Like now it's going to be more difficult to acquire one via trade, and there are slim pickings on the UFA market. I had asked Blake earlier in the show, are we down to everything, a bidding war on Michael Granlund? Make sure you win the Michael Granlund bidding war.
Boy, and it's so unfair to Michael Granlund, but man, would that be underwhelming for a Vancouver fan base that's seen Marcus Granlund come and go. But yeah, possibly. I will say this, that again, and it's been a storyline here for too long, that the Canucks in the market for help at center ice, that the best, you're reminded on days like this, the best place to find centers is in the draft and groom them and develop them yourself. But when you look at Abbotsford and how they just won a Calder Cup, it wasn't necessarily on the backs of center ice prospects. I mean, Ty Mueller somewhere down the line, maybe a bottom six guy for you, but Nate Smith was one of the centers out there. Chase Waters probably isn't going to see the National Hockey League, even though a guy gives it all, was the captain out there. And even, Max Sasson, again, isn't a top-end center. So I will say this, that I was curious where Roger McQueen would go, and to see him wind up in Anaheim, a team that already has Leo Carlsson and Mason McTavish, and now you add 6'5" Roger McQueen, that's how you build the middle of the ice.
Yep, they're taking the swing there, hoping his medicals are going to be okay and that he can be a player. And there's some other examples here as well about how you build center ice. Okay, Jeff, we'll let you get to your other duties here this evening. Thank you for this, and we'll catch up on Monday.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.